Okay, great. Go for it, Carl.
Yeah.
Oh, and everybody else, I'm going to mute
Yeah.
everyone. So maybe John and Todd, if you want to unmute, if you want to let us, and also, of course, Matt. And let's see if I can mute. Oh, okay. There. So everybody's muted. So Matt and John and Todd will want to unmute. And
All right.
it's probably best if you can turn your videos off to do that.
Yeah, I was just thinking that actually.
Yeah.
There we go.
And not, well, you don't have to, Matt. We like to see you.
Fair.
It's me.
But
It's not going to cut in the way of the pictures, is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
No,
Oh, okay,
because
cool.
folks, you probably want to go to speaker view because that's where you'll see the best.
Oh, that's right too. I forgot about that.
Picture. Yeah. And that's it. Okay, great. So, Carmel, would you like to begin? Thank you.
Okay. Good evening and Happy New Year to everyone. Before I introduce Matt, I would first like to once again thank Karen for hosting our Zoom meetings. We have been doing Zoom now since October of 21, and under Karen's careful guidance, we've been doing amazingly well. Zoom has allowed all of our full membership to enjoy these talks, and we get to chat and see each other once again. I would like to mention that next month, John will be showing our members images from the past year. Our speaker for March will be Todd, showing images part 1 of a trip of his to Patagonia. In April, Michael and Anne will give a presentation on our limestone barrens. And in May, we'll finish up again with Todd, part 2 of Patagonia. So tonight we have Matt Levesque, and Matt has been somewhat of a celebrity on the Wildflower of Newfoundland
Well, thank you.
page, posting his wonderful images. He's a student who took up gardening in around 2016, and from garden plants, he developed a keen interest in wildflowers. He lives in Upper Island Cove, and it seems he's really sussed out many of the plants of that area. In addition, Matt collects native plant seeds and sells through the seed company, formerly Gay Seed. And he also has a website, Picture Flower Seeds. I'm sure Matt will give us more information on his website this evening. He is a wonderful photographer, and I'm sure everyone here will enjoy his presentation here tonight. Go ahead, Matt.
Absolutely. Let us begin. I'll start my screen sharing here. All right, can you see this?
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect.
Excellent. Exploring the floral beauty of Newfoundland's Avalon Peninsula, a collection of my favorite photos of unique, interesting, and pretty wildflowers. I've been photographing the wildflowers of Newfoundland, particularly those from the Avalon Peninsula, for about 6 years. Over this time, I've been able to locate many new species and take photos of them each time a new plant is found. I've learned many techniques in identifying plants and when and where is the best to find their flowers. These photographs are some of my favorites, not just the photos, but the plants thereof and their features. This slideshow will include some interesting botanical aspects, but won't be too in-depth. These photos are in an entirely random order. They won't be sorted by name or by blooming time to provide a wide array of surprises. Each photo slide will have the plant's common and scientific names as well as the date and a brief description of the photo. I'll provide some interesting notes worth mentioning too. I'm pleased not only to present this slideshow, but to be asked to present it to you all. I hope you'll enjoy the upcoming photos. We'll start with the typical Newfoundland flower, the provincial symbol, the purple pitcher plant. This is one of my favorite photos. I'm not sure what it is about it. I think it's just because of the way they're nodding. It's very typical of our symbol, like the symbol, just the way they're shaped. Next photo is some more flowers nodding. This is from this year. Well, I should say last year now, because we are 2024. Here's two vertical portrait mode pictures. The one on the left, the petals are drooping quite down straight, as you can see here. On the right side, there's some more drooping, nodding flowers in a little bunch. They're everywhere to be seen in my areas. I almost take them for granted, honestly. And here's a flower front on. This is just behind my house, actually. Right over that cliff is my house and a couple other houses. Here's a seed capsule that's split open. This is early in spring in 2022. These tend to persist. And obviously all the seeds have since deposited. You can see the really bumpy leftover parts here, which is pretty interesting. Next, we have the blue flag iris. This is the provincial symbol of Quebec. I'd say a lot of people are familiar with that. These two are here, really nice. These are also by my house, actually. There's a lot of bogs, but there's one towards the north of my house, and eventually you'll find these full of them. This one's side on. You can really see the venation in this one. I think that's really cool too. Here's one on the left, right next to a pond. They like sitting in stagnant water and running water, I find. And here's some seed capsules on the right. They look a lot like corncob niblets, but I wouldn't eat them. And here's the northern bush honeysuckle. I've only seen this plant once. Even last year I went to look for it and I couldn't find it. This is in Spaniards Bay in Ryan's Brook. It's off the highway, like the main road I should say. If you go up about, say, 2-3 minutes of a walk, you'll find them. They're pretty cool because the leaves are very unique compared to everything else that was around it. Here's some pearly everlastings. These are one of my favorite plants. I thought they were an introduced species, actually. They're not. I thought that only because I see them on roadsides and torn-up areas like I do every other introduced weed. But these get their name because they tend to everlast. If you were to cut them and put them in a vase, they'd stay like this for the most part for a while. They're really pretty.
Matt, can I ask a question about that plant?
Absolutely.
That was the everlasting. Are those that are brown going to seed? Is that?
Yes, I believe they are. As they do get to seed, they tend to get more and more brown, especially in the center. Say this one here, this one's not bloomed yet, but this would be brown in the center as they're mature. And these would be more opened.
So if you want to pick them to make a lovely bouquet that will stay, you want to pick before they go to seed. Is that
Yes,
right?
I'd say I'd pick them when they start looking just like this one, like unopened.
Yeah, neat.
Yes,
Thank you.
This is the pipewort. This one's very common, as the name implies. They stick right out of ponds all the time. I've seen quite a lot, but I haven't been able to get too close up to them. And these are cool close up, excuse me, because they're quite frilly, actually. I'm not sure if these are all female structures or both male and female, but it is a common plant. Here's the starflower. This is another common plant, especially in the wooded areas. This picture rather, I should say, the stamens, I didn't get the best picture because they're pretty blurry, but this top view photo is a better demonstration of them. This is the lance-leaf plantain. This is an introduced species. Unlike the other plantains we're common with, this inflorescent spike is really compact, and the stamens stick out quite a lot, actually, unlike others. And the leaves, they're very ribbed. Another name for this is the ribwort plantain. It's very unlike the other ones we have. This is my favorite aquatic plant, actually, the bog buckbean. It's very pretty, as you can see here. The anthers on the end here are quite golden and puffy when they send off their pollen. They kind of look like half moons. They're especially frilly.
Matt, can I just, for this
Yes.
account, I just mentioned that this is on the front or cover for the Titfords traveling.
Oh, is it?
With, does anybody remember the title? I don't know, John, if you do the Wildflowers of Newfoundland, but it's June and Titford. It's
June and Bill Titford. Yeah, I think it was it wasn't Traveling with Wildflowers. That was another lady.
Todd, it's called A Traveler's Guide to Wildflowers
There
of
you
Newfoundland,
go.
Canada.
Yeah, that's
I
it.
got to make a note of that one.
Yeah. Your photos are exquisite.
Thank you very much. Here's another one close up under the hand lens. You can see the stigma very close up. I don't know if it's wet or moist here, but it looks very like puffy. I don't know how to describe it properly, to be honest. Here's some portrait photos. They stick right out of the water. The leaves, you can usually see them. And here on the right photo, you can see them here. I'm circling them. But for the most part, they tend to stick up without really anything visible, if that makes any sense. This one here is a front-on view. I could try and get the cursor out of the way and steer you to this mode here. There we go. This is the sea milkwort. This is another aquatic plant. As you can see from the leaves, they're very succulent and thick. I'm not sure if this one prefers salty environments, but it is a coastal plant, and I've only seen this one time as well. This was also in Spaniards Bay. This is another oceanside succulent. I believe this one's native. Spergula canadensis, the Canada sandspurry. This leaf here, I should point out, this does not belong to that plant. That's another plantain. And this is similar to other sandspurries we have too, but these leaves are very pronounced and succulent. Here's another plant, and the entire plant flowering a lot, sticking out of a rock. Here's a stinging nettle. This one's common, and if you've ever brushed up against this, of course, we know it's pretty annoying. But these are the male flowers close up. They're really hard to see. This is under a hand lens. This is an alder. I haven't been able to identify this. I'm not sure why. I have a hard time identifying these. It's probably really simple, but either way, this is a puff of pollen falling from one of the male cats shortly after I shook in it. And I sneezed quite after that. These are the female flowers. As you can see, they're very, very different. They're quite red, and the stigma, or the female part story are quite typical of other female parts. This is another relative in that same plant family. However, it's not an alder. This is the beaked hazelnut. I've never seen this in fruit or in making any of its nuts or nutlets, whichever they're properly known as. But this is the female flower. It bears a lot of resemblance to the previous one. And these are the male flowers, the catkins rather. They look quite similar to birch, as again, they are in the same family. And here's the Canada St. John's wort. This is our native St. John's wort species. One of them, at least I should say, these ones are typical because they're yellow. When you think of a St. John's wort plant, you would think the yellow flowers. Here's the bottle brush, also known as the Canada burnet, which is what I prefer to refer to it as. This one's right by a pond, and the light really brings out these stamens. They're quite hairy, actually. Here's the same plant, but this one hasn't fully bloomed. You can see it's starting to slowly progress up the flower stem. This one's the white spruce. This resin or sap sticking out is obviously quite sticky, but I thought it was really cool because the way it was glistening in the sun. Use some poetic words here. And here's the black spruce. This is a totally different plant, of course, but again, in the same genus. This is the male cone, properly known as a strobilus, depositing the pollen onto the leaves below. This is the meadowsweet. This one's common on the drier areas. I see it a lot in roadsides and on quad trails when I'm out and about. They come in a lot of different shades of pink. This one's one of the more pink shades that I've seen.
I'm just going to make an interjection there.
Yes, please.
That pink one you have a picture of is actually the garden cultivated one.
Oh, it is.
Yes,
Okay, that
that's
makes a lot of
Spirea
sense.
expumalda. It self seeds. It's spreads out of gardens quite easily. So no
Okay.
doubt it's one that just sort of naturalized in your area.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Then it does stick quite differently than the other one here.
Yeah,
This I assume is the wild
that's the native one. Yeah.
one. Okay, perfect. This one's quite pretty too, in my opinion. These are some burr reeds. I'm not sure what species these are, but they are quite different. They look like grasses. They're not grasses. They're in the cattail family, actually. But in both pictures here, you can see on the bottom, these are the female structures. And on the top are the male. On the left photo, I don't think they've bloomed entirely, but basically the pollen will fall down from the male onto the female below. They're a pretty simple, interesting plant. Here are the swamp candles. This, I believe, is another native species. Sorry?
One quick thing, the burr reeds are in their own family.
They are? Oh, excellent. Thank you. These swamp candles, these are another, I've only seen these about 2 or 3 times, usually sitting near water that's pretty stagnant. What's cool about these is you can see these bulbets really pronounced. I'm not entirely sure what they're for, but I'd assume it's for vegetative propagation. This is the 3-tooth cinquefoil. This is pretty much everywhere. It's not too interesting, but it's a nice flower all the same. Here's yellow rattle. This is another introduced species. This one we have a native subspecies. This blue tip right here is indicative of the introduced species. Otherwise, the native subspecies, this would be all white. Here's sweet gale, Miraca gale. These are the male flowers under a hand lens. I actually had this photo in a different slide, but it looked better than this one blown up. So I switched it out real quick. And these are the female flowers, very different. Now, these bear a lot of resemblance to the previous flowers in the birch family, the beaked hazelnut and the alder, but these are not related. Here's a male flower on the left and a male and female on the right for comparison. This is the shrubby cinquefoil. This is very common. It's cool because it likes to stick out in bogs and other similar areas. It's pretty medium height. This one's cool. I've only seen this one once as well. This was in near my house at a place called Nettie Smith's Pond. It's a popular watering hole. Basically, all the kids and all them like to go swimming here, take their dogs. But anyhow, I seen this sitting on the edge under some alders in Sweetgale, actually, to be precise, just floating around. I don't know much about them, but they're pretty cool because they're just kind of floating. They just like little floating things, basically. And they're flowering here, as you can see in the left picture here. This is the field scabious. This is a very common plant. If anyone's familiar with Brigus and the Brigus tunnel, this grows very prolifically around there. And this one's from 2021. I've since been able to get other pictures like this one where the flowers, they're not fully open, but on the left and the right, they're starting to begin. And these are the seeds. I think there's a more appropriate name for these, to be honest, but they look really freaky when they finish their blooming. Here we have the creeping snowberry. This one is related to blueberries and the wintergreen plant itself, which tastes and smells quite like it. This one's very, hence the name Hispidula here. It's very spiky both on the sides of the leaves, all along, and even on the berry, as you can see clearly here. They're very tasty. I really enjoyed them, seeing them. This is the gold thread. This is a pretty earlier blooming flower. I've seen this around, not too much, but mostly in the higher and lower areas. I'm not sure if it has much of a preference. But in the right photo, on the side, you can see clearly all the different structures going on there. This is one of my favorite photos of this plant. Actually, this is under a hand lens. It hasn't bloomed all the way, but it looks a lot like a tulip I found. Here's the beach pea. This is one of our native ocean species. I like this one a lot. The flowers are very typical of other pea and bean family plants. This one seems pretty popular again with these aphids here, actually. There are quite a lot on here. Here's a better photo of the flowers. These are the pods. The left are immature and they're still, again, covered in aphids. And on the right, they're very mature, split open, and you can see the seeds within. Needless to say, I gathered some of these. This is bog rosemary. Not edible, but the leaves look just like rosemary, which I assume is the namesake. These are little bunches of flowers. I haven't seen this plant very often either, honestly. But they're really cool because the flowers close up, they almost look like hot air balloons, to say. That's why I've noticed them look like. This is the American pyrola. This is also in the same family, the blueberry family, as is the previous plant. This plant I've seen 2 or 3 times, but they weren't really the best specimens either way. However, this is the best photo I have, or best photos. The one on the right, particularly under the hand lens. This is the water avens. Again, I've only seen this one once. A lot of these plants, actually, I've only seen once, so I'm pretty excited to include them. The front-on view on the left here is pretty interesting. I'm not sure if this blooms more or if this is the extent of its blooming. And on the right are the developing fruits. If you look closely on the end, you can see little burrs that tend to stick in. I'd assume that's for seed dispersal. Any animal that walks by, it hooks into them, and then they're deposited eventually. Here's that same flower on the side on. Here's mountain holly. This is a common shrub. I'm not sure if you consider this a shrub or a tree, to be honest. However, it's common. And the flowers are very, very small. The fruit are inedible, and they're pretty pale and matte in finish. And they do stick out quite well. They're really pretty, I think. Sheep laurel, another common one. This one's related to the blueberry family as well. It's more closely related, I believe, to rhododendrons, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. There's mostly buds here, but just the one flower. I thought this was pretty cool. This one is a weed, of course. We're very familiar with how invasive and how naughty this one is, but unfortunately, the flowers are really pretty close up, which sucks for how bad it is. This is common eyebright. This one, it is, again, common, but I think it's really pretty. It grows in torn up areas, and it's a lot on my lawn. I don't mow it down very often because I think it looks nice. The flowers close up, they kind of look almost like angel wings. And I really like the white, yellow, and the purple they have going on. Here's one of our native forget-me-not species. This is the small flowered one. This one tends to creep out more and prefers wetter areas than the garden cultivars we find. But the flowers, they look very similar, almost exactly the same, if not. Here's another close-up flowers of the same plant. This one's near my house, actually. I say near my house. But if you go down a quad trail, eventually you'll come across a valley area where all these cool plants are. but it says harbor grace. It's basically between those two parts. Here's the cranberry. The cranberry, the cranberry as opposed to the marshberry, which is more common out here. This one has a few different traits to identify it compared to the other. As you can see, the petals here are on the, are much lighter pink, as opposed to here in the marshberry where they're much darker. Not sure if this is a reliable trait to identify them. However, in the next slide, we have a more reliable trait. The marshberry photos on the right, the tips of the leaves are much more pointed, whereas on the cranberry, they're much more rounded. This is the ghost pipe. Many of us should be familiar with this, and if not, this is a plant. It looks like a fungus, but it's not. Again, what's freaky about this is it's in the blueberry family. How this exists, it doesn't photosynthesize, as you can see the lack of chlorophyll. It exists from a fungal relationship existing already between another tree in the forest, and this grows only in woodland areas and nearby, I believe, which can cause confusion with the resemblance to a fungus. And here are them flowering. I'm not sure if they're pink always when they're flowering, but they stand up more erect when they do flower. Here's red osier dogwood. I believe this one is native as well. This one's common on the roadsides and on the quad trails as well. This one, I really like this one because even the fall and the spring, the red twigs are quite attractive. Here's the creeping water plantain. This one's a very interesting plant. This plant is only known in Canada to grow in Bristol's Hope. This plant was discovered by your wife, Howard, I believe in, 2001, I think. A while ago, but not too long in the grand scheme of things. This is the flower. And next slide, we have some more. This is the flower not fully opened. I assume the pink is because it's not fully open, but again, I could be wrong. Here's another flower close up. Some more interesting information about this plant, actually, I have to say, is that there's another spot in the USA. This one was found. The name on it now, oh, I think my camera just cut out. Well, anyways, this plant was only found one time in the USA and only one time here in Newfoundland. Otherwise, you'd be able to say this is the only spot in North America where you'd find this plant. Oops. Here's the marsh skullcap. This one's a mint relative. This one is really cool because the flowers have great bilateral symmetry, and you can see the fuzz on the flowers. And you can't really tell in the photo, but they also do exist on the leaves and the stems. There we go. Here's the evening primrose. This is not native, but it is pretty interesting in the fact that in the fall and early spring, because it's a biennial, the leaf rosettes, they begin green and the tips are quite red. I think this is really pretty. And here's them bloomed. The name evening primrose, I don't count on it as anything because it's not the evening when these have bloomed. And it's been the evening when I've seen them and they've been quite closed. So I don't count on that one. This is lesser swinecrest. This is a cabbage relative, actually. This is on the beach, and I found it on a couple rocky beachy areas, but nothing else, nowhere else really. It's a close-up of the flowers in here.
They're all
And
over the
developing
downtown of St. John's,
Oh, is it?
everywhere.
Oh, wow. I got to keep my eye out for that one then. And we have some developing capsules on the right. These are the three-toed flaxes. The one in the middle is a hybrid between the two on the left and the right. The one on the left is the yellow-toed flax, sometimes known locally as butter and eggs. The one on the right is the striped-toed flax. You can see the one in the middle shows a lot of obvious hybridization between the two, where the stripes are on the upper lobes here and the yellow here. The next photo we have just the yellow snapdragon, or not snapdragon, sorry, the butter and eggs. They are in the snapdragon family though, actually. And next here are the striped ones. You can see the striped toad flaxes themselves. The flowers are smaller overall, and the stripes are very pronounced. Here's two different hybrid species. The one on the left, the veins are more pronounced as well, and on the right, the flowers are much lighter. They could take on very many forms in hybridization in color, shape, growth. I've seen a bunch actually, but I haven't really many good photos other than these two. This is the shining rose. We have a bunch of rose species, quite a lot actually. I've seen a few, some I haven't been able to fully identify. This one I could easily identify because of this, the presence of all these bristles, as bristly as they are. Most other roses usually are thorny and not as bristly as this. This is the bake apple, known locally, I should say, cloudberry otherwise. These ones are pretty rare. At least I haven't found too many. This one's in Spaniards Bay, towards the end of Seymour's Road, actually, in a boggy area. And here's the palmate shape of the leaves. It's the best picture I have of them. This berry is not ripe yet. I see a lot of frustration going on farming groups, homesteading, similar. People saying, oh, you could pick these, put them in a jar, and they'll ripen. That's not the case. Do not pick them until they look like this. This is a very ripe fruit. This one, I'm not very fussy over this plant, to be honest. It's one of those things you either love it or you hate it. And I know I can't say I love it, but I respect it.
By the
This is
way,
the- Yes,
by the way, Matt, they're male and female bake apples. So,
male
and if you're going along, you can't find any berries, but lots of leaves. Well, they're probably male flowers.
Oh, that explains a lot then, actually, because I've seen quite a lot of leaves, but very few berries in a couple spots. Back to the chokeberry here. Under the flowers on these stems here, they're nearly hairless. This is one of the key traits in identifying this, as well as the shape of the leaf. I don't have as many good representative pictures of the leaves as I should, but they are a telltale trait. What's cool about these species as well, you can't really see in this picture, but through the midrib of the leaf, there's these little, almost barbs, I want to say, but hairs that you could feel if you were to rub your thumb against them. These fruits are mature. They are edible, but they do dry your mouth out a lot, which is their namesake. I'm not sure if they're normally this pubescent or not, but these are quite woolly. This is the purple chokeberry. On the right, you can see the woolliness beneath the flower stems, much more pronounced as opposed to the last. And this is a much lighter shade of, much darker pink shade of flowers. There's a large grouping of these actually where I found these. I'm not sure where it was, but they're very fragrant. It was nice. And these are the ripe and unripe fruits of this plant as well. Same as the last plant, they're edible, but they do have an astringent property. I think both species, I think they taste quite nice actually, but you'd have to cook them down. This is the twin flower, Carl Linnaeus's favorite flower. I haven't seen many of these in this much of a bunch, I should say. I see a lot of them trailing and creeping through the woods, which is where they like to exist, but I haven't seen too many in flower. And here's one close up. This is cool because the light, it really captures the glandular hairs on the stem and around the calyx as well. Here's the 3-leaf rattlesnake root. Now, this one doesn't look like it at a glance, but it's in the dandelion or daisy family. These flowers tend to nod downright. I think they look really cool, especially with the features sticking out on the front. This is the dogberry tree. We have a few of these in Newfoundland. I'm not sure if they're all native or introduced, but these are a close-up of the more common ones around my area. Personally, I think they smell very foul, actually. Quite foul. Here's more photos of them under the sun. These are bladderworts. These are a really cool plant. Some people are familiar with these. I'd say many of us are, but those that aren't, these are a carnivorous plant. They exist in boggy areas for the most part, I believe. Some exist in ponds, I think. This one's in a stream/boggy area. And how these work, these purple features right here are the traps. They have microscopic hairs on the ends of them that, when triggered by microorganisms swimming by, will activate almost a vacuum suction on it, and then that'll ingest and consume the prey that they eat. Here's a flower of the common bladderwort. I've only seen this one once, and this was last year. This isn't cool compared to the next one I'll show you. The horned bladderwort. This one I found more often than the last. I don't know if it's more common or not, but you can see clearly that it's quite horned on the bottom here, a very pronounced feature. And there is a lack of red stripes I find too. Here's marsh cinquefoil. This is one of our native species. This one is nice. The flower is very unique. This one's also at Bristles Hope, and I was looking for the Baldelia actually, which I've gotten pretty lucky every time I was there, except once. I haven't found it blooming, only the leaves. But I still found it. And here's another flower of this one. This one hasn't fully opened, I don't think, but it's still very pretty in color. This is the northern wild raisin. This one bears edible fruit, which, from my understanding, unfortunately, in the St. John's area, they've been decimated by the viburnum leaf beetle. In my area, though, fortunately, I've seen very little, if any, damage from them, and the fruits are fairly prolific, especially last year. These are the fruits here. In the bottom left photo, you can see an immature and a mature fruit. The blue fruit are the ripe ones. They have a large, flat, central stone that you can't eat, but the berries themselves are. They're not too bad, I don't find.
Nat, I think they've actually made a good comeback.
Say
from
again,
the-
have they?
Yes, I don't know if the botanists would agree with me, but certainly on my walks. I've
Oh,
seen
Um,
good.
quite a
There,
few.
it seems like the leaf beetle has reached its peak and maybe has dropped off a bit. I mean, we basically lost them all up at the garden, but now I'm starting to see a scattered one, which seems to be trying to come back a little bit. But
Oh, that's
still
promising.
around the city itself, I mean, the introduced ones like your snowball bush, they still get completely decimated by the viburnum leaf beetle.
Oh, well, I have a snowball bush in my garden, actually, and again, I haven't seen any damage on that, luckily, which is
No,
weird.
and again, it may only be just in, in the St. John's, greater St. John's area. I mean, it was basically they came in an infected stock from the
Oh,
mainland from
yeah,
one of the nurseries. So
I could see that. In the next photo, we have, I'm sorry, I was trying to get the camera working. Oh, what have I got going? There we go. Oh, silverweed. This is its flower. This is another common brackish water plant, I believe, is the proper. Oh, my camera's back.
No,
I think. And underneath the leaves are very silver, as you can see in this photo, hence their namesake. Here we have mullein. This is a common plant. Maybe common, maybe not. It's introduced, but I've seen it a few times on roadsides in disturbed areas. I'm not sure if the same is for other folks, but it's pretty cool. It's very, very fuzzy. Here's the strawberry. I'm not sure if this is the same cultivated strawberry or a different variety, but this is very common. And last year, I haven't found very many of them fruiting, unfortunately, because they are quite tasty. And here's another flower. This one doesn't seem to have the male features on it as the last one did, which is unusual. To me, at least. This plant is interesting. This has quite a story behind it, actually. This is the tiny vetch. This plant is not known to exist in Newfoundland currently. It was once recorded, but it's since been excluded from our flora as it's been misidentified. However, I found this one day, just doing my casual exploring, botanizing. I saw this sandbar. This is in New Harbor, I should specify. The sandbar area that's pretty inaccessible, actually. There's really, really high shrubs and thorny bushes to walk through. But I walked to it looking for interesting things to see, because that's usually where they are. They're harder to get at. Anyhow, I saw this plant. It looks different than the normal vetch I saw right off the bat, because the flowers were small and the leaves just looked different. So I collected a specimen of this to send in for analysis, but I haven't heard back from that yet. Hopefully I'll hear back soon, and I can post some updates later on, because I'm intrigued to see what this is. Here's spurred gentian. Excuse me, sorry, just one moment. This plant I've only seen once, and this was in Spaniards Bay at the end of Seymour's Road. I haven't seen this plant since when I've taken these pictures. Oh, that was 3 years ago now. Well, unfortunately, I don't think it might be there anymore, but it's still a very cool plant. Here's the bog bilberry. This one's awesome. I shouldn't say it's awesome. I don't know what makes it awesome, but the leaves are really cool. They're very veiny and very round, short. This is also in the blueberry family. The flowers bear a lot of resemblance to other members in that family as well. The berries here on the top, these are ripe. They look a lot like blueberries, but they seem to be more elongated. Taste is very similar, but I haven't found very many berries that are ripe. Here's the Fraser's March St. John's wort. This is also in the St. John's wort family, but it looks unlike many of them. I haven't found many of them fully blooming. I've seen them blooming, but I haven't seen the flowers open entirely, so these two pictures are cool because I was able to see them that way. On the right, we have a fly doing its job pollinating one of the flowers too. These are the capsules. I find these look similar to other members of the St. John's wort family, where they're somewhat glossy and have the same shape. Marsh speedwell. This is native, I believe, as well. This one exists in wetter areas. I've seen it mostly in running water. It's very creeping in the left photo, as you can see, and tends to droop outwards. And the right is a close-up photo that, unless you look close up, you probably won't see. There's slight purple venation here in the upper petal, which is pretty interesting. Here's the blue bead lily. This is a native woodland species. This one's very common in my area. I imagine it is across the rest of the Avalon. The berries, as bright and beautiful as they are, they're not edible, but they are one of the most vivid shades of blue that I've seen in the wild. And on the right is the flower, which is quite yellowish greenish. And this is indeed in the lily family as well. Tall meadow rue is another one that's not in the lily family, but it is in the buttercup family. It's very common in bogs and wetland areas as well. Most of these plants I've seen are either male or female. Well, of course, I mean, that's how plants work. But what I mean is mostly males are what I found. In the next photo, we have a male again with the stamen falling off. This I didn't notice until I looked at the picture, which is pretty interesting. These are female flowers. The one on the right bears more of a greener, lighter shade than the one on the left, or sorry, the one on the left more than the right. These white flowers are interesting. I'm not sure if this is normal for this or if this is just unusual, but you can see there's male features as well as the female features. I thought that was interesting enough.
You can get all variations, and that's not that uncommon, but
Okay, cool.
it occurs.
Oh, excellent. And here's more shades of the female. The one on the left is more the greener, yellowish one, and on the right is more pale pinkish. This is self-heal, one of our native mint relative species. This plant I like. This is one of the ones I like to gather and sell seeds of. On the left photo is really unique because that's not a flower. It's a collection of the bracts and calyces that when you view them from a top-down view, they have a lot of symmetry and they almost look like a flower themselves. And on the right are the flowers themselves. They have a typical mint family flower look, I think. Oops. These are introduced species, or subspecies, I should say, of the hedge bindweed. The one on the left is a more common form, and I found that in a lot of torn up areas, especially in an area by my house where people dump their garbage. But that's another complaint for another day.
Matt,
on the right is the more...
Hello, Matt. Yeah, Matt.
Yes.
Yeah, the pink one is native to North America.
Oh, no way.
Because of its subspecies, of course.
Oh, okay.
But, and the white ones are basically introduced from, I suppose, Europe. So
Okay.
you'll find the pink ones quite often along the tops of beaches, like
Yes,
above
exactly.
beach
That's where
rocks
I
and
found
stuff. Whereas you'll find the white ones more in like towns and more bushy areas usually. But
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually, based on the habitats of both of these. Here's a coniferous plant, the roundleaf sundew. This is one of the more common sundews in my area, and I'd say mostly across the Avalon. These are the flowers. I find they stick up more outright than the next sundew I'm going to show you. Here's the leaves. The one on the right is a good picture in my opinion because you can really see the drops of the gluey mucilage on it that the flies will land on and get stuck to eventually. Here's the spatulate leaf sundew. Looking at the leaf, you could tell right away that it's not as round and it goes out quite more elongated. What I've noticed about this plant is they tend to prefer more watery areas than a bog, which is what I've noticed. I could be wrong. And the flowers are larger, but they don't go near as high off the ground as they do in the previous sundew. And here's the blueberry plant we're all familiar with. These are really pretty, of course, not just the flowers or the berries, but the leaves as well. In the spring, summer, sometimes in the summer too, because this is September, right before the end of the summer, they have a lot of cool burgundy colors. I don't know if this is a fungus or if it's just snow, but it is still pretty. Here's another shade of the pink that the flowers come in. They come in a lot of variation too. Here are some ripe berries. Very tasty. Last year I found they were very, very prolific in blooming, and I got lucky to get a nice few. Here's some more. Here's the bristly sarsaparilla. This is, I believe, a woodland species because I've only seen it there. And this one's interesting. I don't have any pictures of it when it's fruiting, but when it does fruit, these flowers will all eventually turn into a blackish bluish ball. And I can't describe how it looks when it's fruiting, but it is pretty cool. Here's a rhodora. This one's closest to the rhododendrons because it is in the same genus. This one's really pretty. This one's an earlier bloomer in the very early summer, late spring. I'd say late spring actually because this one's June 12th. Either way, very pretty flower. Here's some buds of the flower with, I believe, a little wasp of some sorts on it. Something. And here are the seed capsules. I've tried looking for seeds from this one a lot, but I'm not sure what it is. I seem like I missed them. I'm either too early or too late, but they seem to persist on the plant for the year afterwards. This is our northern bog violet. This is one of the many native violet species we have. This one's mostly in wetland areas as well, hence the name bog, where I've seen a lot of these. I've seen a lot of these near its brothers and sister plants, such as the white and the other, I forget which name, I'll get to in the next slide. The petals are really curling in this one, as you can see. Under a hand lens, you can see the flowers too clearly, and inside you can see the hairs, which are quite tapered. I'll show a better comparison after of another violet. And here's a relative of it, the northern white violet. These ones are very, very small, and I find they're one of the first violets to bloom. They're really, really interesting to see, especially at the time of year when they do bloom.
You want to check the species on that one. It's been variously called Palins or McCloskii or something, but just
yes, this one was really recently renamed from McCloskii to Peninsula. I believe that was 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, it
I
has
could
been.
be wrong.
No, no, you could be right. So I'll check that myself. Thanks.
I could be wrong too. I'll have to check it out as well.
It was McCloskii, and Sue Mead sent out the latest name change, so it is Minuscula now.
All right.
Okay, cool.
That's about the third or fourth name now. So
Yeah.
okay,
For
fair
now.
enough. Fair enough.
Excellent, thank you. And here's a planet's habitat. As you can see, compared to what's surrounding it, it is quite small. But they are pretty because they stick out nicely. Here's it next to another violet. This is not the previous bluer violet, but this is the marsh blue violet. And in the next structure, I'll show you that the hairs in this one are quite glandular as opposed to the last. In this next slide, I have a close-up to compare the two. They're pretty pixely, but still, you get the gist of it. This is the pin cherry. This is a common plant, I find very common actually, in roadsides and old abandoned homesteads. It's native, and again, it's a cherry. It makes a good fruit. In the next picture, you can see 2 of them here, especially in the right picture. It has that typical twin cherry appearance. They're nice, I don't mind them, but they're pretty small for what it's worth. Here's another relative of it, the choke cherry. This one's different because you can see the flowers that grow up in a raceme here as opposed to just sitting on a stalk on the stem itself. And the petals of this flower, the outer margins are very ripply. Don't have any good close-up pictures to show that though, unfortunately. And here are the fruits. As you can see, they do dangle from the raceme opposed to the last berries. These are darker, but the name is not really reliable because you can eat them. I haven't noticed any astringent effect. But again, it was only a small handful, so I don't know if it was enough to really get an idea for it. This is the mountain fly honeysuckle. This is very, very common in the bogs. This one's cool because you can see from the top here, there's one ovary, in which case will eventually become the fruit or the berry, and 2 flowers emerge from this one ovary. You can see this better in these next pictures here on the left, and on the right especially, the right berry, you can see these 2 dots from where they once emerged. Here's the grassleaf arrowhead. This one's related to the Baldelia. It bears a lot of resemblance to it until you do look close at it. I've only seen this plant twice actually. The first time was in the left picture, which shows the male structures, a male flower, and the right are the female flowers. I guess the female flowers have an essence or something exuded because they really attract all these flies here, as opposed to the male here. Here's the water lobelia, another common wetland aquatic plant that I like. It's in the lobelia family. As you can see, it's quite similar with the flower appearance, quite lighter shade. And the leaves also, I don't have a picture of that, but they are succulent leaves as well. This is my second favorite aquatic plant, actually, the fragrant water lily. Many of us should be familiar with this one. On the left, we have a typical view of it. If you were to Google it, you'd see something like that. The top-down view of 2 different flowers in various maturity looks really interesting. You can see a lot of symmetry here going on in this one, which I think is really neat. Next photo has another one. This looks like a close-up, but it's not. I'm not sure why it looks weird like that. This one, I like this picture a lot. It's good. just the way they're all in the distance and the foreground. We have some blooming plants here. This was taken at Country Road in Bay Roberts. I found a lot of plants actually in there. So if you're ever in that area and you want to see some of these, go down there and you'll find a lot. It's not really a country road, but it's not too torn up neither. So it is accessible. Here's some of the leaves from the top-down view. This is really interesting. Just the different shades of hues and the shapes and sizes overall. It's a really interesting contrast, I think. This is another pond lily. This one's not as interesting as the last, but it is still definitely interesting. This is the flower close up. This another flower that I think has something really attractive in it, because these are very, very well populated with gnats, and that's been the case for every flower actually I've seen of this. Here's another flower. This one hasn't fully bloomed, which has a cool appearance. And again, another picture where I didn't notice something until I looked at it. We have a fly coming in for a landing. Here's a sea rocket, another plant similar to, found on coastlines more often. This is in the cabbage family as well. The leaves are succulent, as you can kind of see here, and the capsules especially on the right. The flowers are pretty small and inconspicuous. Here's field thistle. This one I believe is introduced. It's pretty, we're familiar with thistles because of how sharp and prickly they are. The one on the left is a bit interesting because you can see one of the flowers centrally close up here. Not necessarily close up. On the right is one of the whiter flowered forms. This seems to be rare. I've only found this once, and I've seen a couple posts in the Facebook group about this one as well. This is Queen Anne's lace. This one has a nice story behind it too, and I'll tell you in the second picture. The first picture you can see the flowers, of course, haven't bloomed, and when they haven't bloomed, they have a nice pinkish magenta hue to them. And this central flower in the red, story behind this, now don't quote me on this, I could be mistaking this, but basically Queen Anne, when she was stitching and making fabrics one day, she pricked her finger with a needle, and the blood would eventually land on her lace. This central red flower represents that drop of blood. Here's spotted Joe Pyeweed. This is a native species, and I like this one a lot. It's existing in a lot of running water stream areas. I've seen this one a lot too. It's really nice. It's in the daisy family. Here's another close-up. This one, again, I didn't see until I looked at the picture. We have another fly coming in for landing. Very busy areas, the wetlands, I find. One of my favorite areas to explore. Here's the blue-eyed grass. This one's in the iris family. And it's called it because it looks quite like a grass. Very short, but the flower is very, very attractive. There's a close-up of this flower. And here's the capsules with some seeds inside. The seeds, if you can see closely, they are dimpled. And that, I assume, is to hold water to help germination. Here's the Japanese larch. This, I'm not 100% sure on this ID, but from what I've been able to identify and research, I think this might be it. These are the young female cones, and they're quite pretty, I find, with their pink purplish margins. Here's the spotted jewelweed, also known as the spotted touch-me-not. These ones' seed capsules are very explosively dehiscent when they split open, basically, is what that means. I haven't seen any capsules, unfortunately, because I'd love to A, collect some, and B, witness that explosion. These pictures are pretty nice because there's a front view and a side view. These are in Harbor Grace near the Kyle. There's a little walkway down there. If you follow that walkway and look in the wetter areas near, like it's a brackish water, I believe, is around where that is. You'll see this plant. This is one of the only places I think I've seen this one as well. Oh no, that's a lie. North River, this is a couple years ago. This one's much more pronounced with the orange, but it is older in age because the one up here is getting old. This one's in the Impatiens family as well. Here we have a Chuckley pear. This one, I might be able to get some input here because I wasn't able to identify it fully. However, I think it's A. levis, but I could be wrong because these features here, they're quite woolly. And long story short, I posted another picture in the wildflower group. And one idea is possible that it could be A. spicata. But again, I didn't have enough pictures. As is the case with most of my... Sorry?
First one looks fairly like Levis, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I figured it. Thank you. And the next one is Bartram's Chuckley pear. This one's also as common, I find, and the petals are much, much smaller. And the leaves, the leaves I find are more wider. Turn that laser, there we go. Here's another one with the bronze darkish leaves. Here's our seaside plantain. This is a native species. This one grows, as the name implies, quite on the sides of the seas and in cliffs easily. This one's at my house down by the wharf, sticking out of the rock, and I thought it looked really pretty. These ones are currently flowering now. Here's another one. This is a nice picture, I think, as well. This one's sticking out of an old log on the wharf. An old dirty log, but nature still finds its way. Here's some harebells, another seaside, cliffside plant. These are at Mad Rock. If you've ever been to Mad Rock or haven't been, I do strongly recommend you go because you'll see a lot of these in the summer. And they're very, very pretty. Here's a bee sticking out of one of them doing its job. And here's a flower with a lighter shade of pink. This, I'm not sure if it's very common or if it's a mutation or whatever, but it's very light. I haven't seen too many like this. And here's two flowers overlooking the seashore. Very pretty. Again, if you're able to go to Mad Rock, please do, because it's such a beautiful spot, especially with these particular flowers. Here's fireweed, another common plant. I like this plant a lot. This is one plant I like to collect and sell the seeds from as well, because it's native and the bees love it. You could eat fireweed jelly with this, the flowers, and you could also eat the young shoots, but neither I've tried, but they're apparently very good. Here's another fireweed one. The petals are pretty cooled up on this one. They look a little different. Here's the seed capsule split open. These, you might see these a lot on the side of the road later on in the year, between September and August. They're really puffy, and when they split open, they have very long, slender hairs attached to the very tiny seeds, as you can see here, these brown parts. And of course, the wind will disperse them a great distance. Here's our partridge berry. Outside of Newfoundland, you'll hear this plant referred to as the lingonberry. And outside of Newfoundland, the partridge berry refers to another plant. But locally, we call it the partridge berry. The flowers are very similar to blueberries, as this is another relative to them, but they are much, much shorter, as is the plant overall. This is black knapweed, an introduced plant. The name is pretty indicative. It is a bit of a weed, but the bees love it. It is a great source of food for them. And these filaries on the side are what's really interesting about this one. I'll highlight them a bit here. They kind of look, if they were to fall off and into your hand, you'd get a fright because they look like bugs, actually, which is pretty interesting. I think it's very unique for them. This is the flower of that same plant. And this is a whiter form of flower. This is in Spaniards Bay, near Ryan's Brook. It's on that trailway path, the old Newfoundland Railroad, which has since been turned into a quad path. I think they're doing that across all of Newfoundland, actually. I could be wrong. But either way, this is one of the whiter flowered forms, similar to that thistle, I assume. Again, it is in the same family. This is my chair scratching against the wall. Here's oyster leaf. This is another shoreside plant. This one's in the borage family, and the leaves, they taste apparently like oysters. I haven't had oysters, but I have tasted this leaf, and they have an interesting taste, to say the least. Here's a close-up of the flowers on the side view with an aphid. And here's the leaves. You can see they're really waxy and almost flowery. Farinose, I believe is the word. And they rub off very, very easily here, as you can see from the scratches and the damage. Here's the pink crowberry. This is yet another blueberry relative. These are very, very early bloomers, as you can see on the left. This one was taken in April of 2 years ago. These are the female flowers, and they're very succulent. The stigma, I believe, is what these features are. And the ripe berries on the right here. This is the black crowberry, much more common, as a lot of people in Newfoundland actually call these the blackberry, but it's not, I can't say it's incorrect, but we also have the blackberry itself, the rubus species. And again, this one's another early bloomer. The flowers are very similar to the pink crowberry in the previous photo, but they appear much darker. Here's a mound of the black crowberry in the early spring. I really like the colors on this one, how they're starting to go from bronze to greenish and yellow. This, I'm not sure if this is a reliable comparison. However, this is what I've noticed from the two plants from when I found them. The pink crowberry, which I've only found once, is in the top here and is very flat and creeping out, whereas the black crowberry almost grows in like a mound, which is the same mound in the previous photo, actually. But again, I'm not sure if this is a reliable trait to identify the two, other than the obvious color difference in the berries. Here's musk mallow. This is a garden escape. I like this one. I like collecting and selling the seeds of this one too. It's in the sense that it should be grown as a garden perennial. Sometimes they're white, sometimes they're pink, which is why the name brides and grooms comes. And on the right, we can see the papery calyx surrounding the seeds has gotten almost skeletonized, which is really cool. I haven't seen that going on any other plants, really. The veiny skeletonized appearance. Here's the creeping spearwort. This one is also a common wetland area one, mostly in running water streams is where I've seen him. He's in the buttercup family, and they're very, very small. This next slide on the right photo, you can see a size comparison compared to my hand. And the left is another close-up of them. They are really short too and creep out. So this one on the right, I picked up off the ground a little tiny bit. This is the wild raspberry. This is a close-up of the flower, and I don't have any pictures of the fruit mature. None that are good, at least. But still interesting to show the flower. Here's the field horsetail. This one's a unique specimen. On the left, we have some plants sticking out. And on the right, we have almost an entire field of them, actually. From a distance, they look like a grass. When you get up close, you see they're actually not at all. This is at the beach in Bryant's Cove, which is near my house. If you keep going down, you'll take a left, basically, and then you'll get that way. If you ever get to there, check out the right side of the beach, and you'll see a big, big colony of these. Here's the strobilus of one of them, close up. This is comparable to a flowering structure in other plants. This picture I like a lot. I'm not sure why. It's just the way it's close up, I think, is what it is, but either way. Here's the dewberry. This one's very similar to the raspberry, both in shape and the fact that it is related to it. The flowers are not showy at all, actually. In fact, this one on the left is probably one of the prettier ones I've seen, both because it's pink and because that it's more open than they usually are. And even then, they don't open with good symmetry, I find. On the right is a ripe fruit. They're very tasty. Last year was another great year for them, actually. Here's another ripe fruit. This one's a good example of a ripe fruit specimen, I think. Very full of the compound fruits. Here's timeleaf speedwell. This is one of our native species and another species that grows on my lawn a lot. I won't mow the lawn when these are growing, or I'll mow around it because they're really small and nice. As you can see, there's a purple venation going on the flowers, which is really cool. Again, these are related to other speedwells. Here's bunchberry, also known as crackerberry. This is a carpet covering a forest floor with blooming plants, actually. I posted this in the Facebook group a couple of years ago. This might look familiar to some people. This is in Spaniards Bay at the end of Seymour's Road. There's a wooded area to the right of the quad paths. Eventually, if you walk down here, you'll find this open area. Now, last year, it wasn't near as pretty as this, so it might have just been a lucky year for this when I found it that year. Here's the berries close up when they're ripe. You might not notice it at first, but close up in a picture, you'll see that they are actually slightly hairy, which is interesting. Now we'll move on to another segment. We're going to glance at some graminoids. Sedges, grasses, and rushes. Some people overlook these. I think they're really pretty and they deserve to be shown off as well. I don't have very many good pictures, but enough to make a segment worth. Here's bog cottongrass. This is very common in the bogs and other areas nearby it. I haven't any pictures of it in the cottony stage, I'll call it, but this is it flowering. No good pictures of the cotton, I should say. Here's the white spike rush. This is in the sedge family, and this one, I believe, actually, I could be wrong. This one's pretty inconspicuous, very small. This one's close up. And honestly, it doesn't really look the best blown up on the screen, but still, it's interesting, worth including. Here's the spike rush. This one's in the rush family. You can see the male and female structures on both these flowers here. I think these might be different species, but I'm not 100% sure. But they still look pretty. Here's a sedge. Again, I have no idea what species this one might be. Sedges are really difficult to identify, especially for the amateur botanist, such as myself. But this is really interesting. You can see the pistils, I believe is the word, yes, sticking out here on the female structures. These will eventually mature into fruit and then seeds. There we go. Here's the black-girdled woolgrass. This is another sedge. This plant's cool. I'm not sure if it's normal for this plant or if I just didn't see the entire plant fully. But on one side, we have all the female flowers. They're typical of other female flowers in their white, frilly, hairy structure, I'll say. And on the right, we have the males. I feel like I'm confusing my left and my right a lot. Here's another sedge. This one's really cool. It's very hairy. It's blooming in its entirety right now. These are only the female flowers. Usually there's male flowers above it as well, but I haven't seen any. Looks like it might have fallen off or something based on what I see here. I believe this is the end of this segment. Yes, let's look at some mutated plants. This is an interesting segment I was happy to put together. Here we have a larch tree, also known as a tamarack. The leaves, they have a variegation going on, but the pattern is really consistent, actually. Sue pointed this out on the Facebook page. Well, I didn't notice it. That this here basically is the average appearance of the leaf. And if you look closely, they do have a similar distribution of their pigment and non-pigment. Here's a fasciated plant. When a plant is fasciated, I'm not sure genetically what goes on, but it basically looks as if the plant was copied and pasted several times on its side. This is the top of an evening primrose, and the flower stalk on the top has gone really, really crested, actually. Here's the three-tooth cinquefoil again. This one is interesting. I'm not sure fully what kind of mutation is going on here. The leaves are unusually large, the ones that lack the pigment, which is pretty interesting, I find. Here's meadowsweet, another plant experiencing some fasciation. These look like old PC cables, old ribbon cables sticking out. And this, speaking of sticking out, this really stuck out to my eye when I was riding on the quad looking for random plants, which, again, most of my adventures consist of that. This was really unique because look at how the leaves are sticking out. It's very unusual. And another harebell. This one's also at Mad Rock, actually. This is very clearly mutated. This one has a lot extra lobes than it should. Usually they have about 5 lobes. This is that same exact plant showing the stem and how it has the exact same fasciated appearance, an old cable look. These are very cool. I like finding fasciated specimens. And here's the Canada burnt, the bottle brush again. The variegated leaf pattern is unique in this one. I enhanced the picture here in the bottom right to see if you could get an idea of it. Like each little cell, I'll call it, little segment, gradually reduces in pigment until it's clear and has none, which is unique. Here's the partridge berry or the lingonberry again. On the left, we have a nice variegated leaf pattern. These, I like variegated leaves like that, and I think a lot of other people do because common garden cultivars of species will have these traits as well. On the right is something I think it's totally different because it's unusual. All the leaves in the top, as you can see, are lacking pigment, but the bottom one here, the pigment is missing halfway throughout the leaf in an unusual way, or so I consider unusual. Here's a dewberry again. This one, as you can tell, looks very, very unusual. These parts here, I believe, are what should be the fruit flesh, and where these would be the fruits themselves or otherwise the seeds. And these, I'm not sure, but it's very unusual deformed growth either way.
I think that's just incomplete fertilization. I don't know, Todd.
It might be it. I think so, eh?
Yeah,
Here's another pretty
I've never
segment.
seen anything like it before.
No, actually, eh? Yes, this is our last segment. Actually, wow, I feel like I'm almost done already. So fast. This orchid, I have a lot to say about him. This is the highlight of the slideshow. This is the ragged fringed orchid, which was described by Merritt Linden Fernald as the Newfoundland form. I have some notes here on the side I'll read out a bit. Sue Meads, when I posted this originally in the Facebook group, that it could be a plant that resulted from back crossing of the hybrid P. X. andrewsi with P. lacera, a process called introgression, but no two flowers of these will look alike. And John, you gave me some additional info about this plant recently in the email. And from what I get, and I can summarize, is that all these plants will bear similarities with varying hybridization. And the sketches you sent me in the email today, actually, the closest sketch that resembles my plant is the Sault Ste. Marie specimen. And this is located in it's Carbonear. Oh no, this location's wrong actually. This is in Harbor Grace down Glover Road towards the very end before Bog. And I found a dwarf birch in there too, not that that is of any significance. This was lone inconspicuous plant sticking out. I took a picture of it thinking, You know, it's an orchid. I try and identify it, but I couldn't compare it to anything because none of the known orchids we have here bear any resemblance to this. And then that started the quest of trying to identify this. And unfortunately, this is the only picture I have of this plant, but it's very unique because there's no really form that looks like this. I tried Googling again to find other forms and similarities. I've only found one picture ever that looks almost identical to this, and even then it's quite different. Oh, there we go. Here's our pink lady slipper.
Oh,
This one?
just to
Oh,
back
sorry.
up just a second.
Yes, let's see. There might be some more to say here.
One of the things about Newfoundland is that pretty much all of the lacera, the white ones like this, are in Newfoundland have a much stubbier, really much reduced flower structure. The mainland ones, as I call them, which you can see some, if you really look hard, you can find them out around Port aux Basques, are really like cut up way more and more stringy and really stringy
Okay.
sometimes.
Yeah, I've
And
seen that in a lot of the ones you sent me in the email.
but
Go on, sorry.
most of the ones from Newfoundland, in my experience, are this reduced thing that Fernald called Terra Nova. In essence, the common ones are the reduced ones, and you barely ever see the really stringy mainland types. So I've had some interesting conversations with Paul Catling, who's a Canadian orchid fellow, who's actually writing a book on the orchids of Canada now, and I don't know when it'll come out, but probably soon.
Okay.
And he and I have been trying to puzzle these things out, and we basically concluded that you can't do it in a
they seem
sort of an
weird.
overall sense without probably doing some DNA, because you can speculate on all kinds of things, but
Yay.
I don't know. I think Fernald was right, and I think they're the common Newfoundland ones, but others may disagree.
I wonder if I'll find any more of these in the future in this shape.
Even the Newfoundland psychotes are quite, stumpy flowers as opposed to
Yeah, I think Sue mentioned that actually. She did mention something about the psychotes group.
Yeah.
But
they all madly do interbreed all the sort of the general ragged orchids. And if you ever get, now I don't know if it's still there, because the last time I was there, the farmer had done something evil with a plow. But out in the Codroy Valley area, there's a place called Woodville. And if you go along, sort of partway along the shore road in Woodville, you'll see a road that goes 90 degrees up from the road. You can sort of follow it with the telegraph poles in order to find it. You go partway up there, and on a real sharp curve in the road where you can park, you just sort of find a field. And like, to say that there was thousands of ragged orchids in that field would be an understatement. And they were everything from grandiflora to psychotes to lacera, and absolutely every possible variation in between.
Oh wow!
So
I'll
if
have
you
to
ever get
remember
out
that spot.
there, you might be able to find it if it's still there.
Oh,
And
hopefully.
I've never seen anything like it.
Oh wow! I'm dying to get to the West Coast. Honestly, I've only ever been to the East Coast. I've been there before as a kid, but of course, I had no interest in the flora at that point. Might have seen many cool species, but it just went right by me.
But the southwest coast, the Codroy area in particular, is a place for this group. If you really want to see every possibility for it's mind-boggling.
Oh, I would love to get out there. I'll definitely have to make note of that place.
Woodville.
Woodville, yes. Yeah, this is definitely a unique orchid overall. I wonder if there's many other forms to be seen. We have here now the pink lady slipper. This is the provincial flower of Prince Edward Island. 2 years ago, I haven't seen any of these actually, just the seed capsule, developing fruit. But now last year, 2023, they were everywhere. I had very great opportunities to get pictures. On the left, we have a nice bunch of plants here. There's only about 4, I believe. And on the right is a nice flower front-on picture. Here's a close-up of the inside part of the upper flower. You see a lot of hairs. One point interesting I noticed is that these hairs on this part of the flower, they're tapered, where on the greener part, they appear to be glandular, which I found interesting. Here's another orchid. This one's completely unlike the last orchids, and you wouldn't say it's an orchid if you were to look at it as an amateur or even then. It's quite green. This is the green adder's mouth orchid. It looks kind of like a snake's mouth. I can see the resemblance to that. This one's very, very small. I'd say no more than the height of like a CD-ROM, honestly, if that. They're very inconspicuous too. You have to really look down to find them, is what I've noticed. This is the rose begonia. This one's more common. There's a lot of these behind my house in that boggy area I showed you previously with the pitcher plants. And they're very easy to see. Of course, pink sticks quite out. And I like these ones as well. Here's the scent bottle. This is another Platanthera species, just like the last one we discussed. The same genus, I should say. These ones are usually typical, I find. They're pretty tall, quite taller than the last few. And they have a really good scent. You'd have to bend down to smell them, though. And if in the boggy area, it can be pretty hard. But for me, there's really no terrain unnavigable. Here we have the tuberous grass pink. This picture I'm not too fond of in a ways, because up here, these parts are kind of blurry. But that's just me being too particular. I've only seen this one time, and that was last year in Harbor Grace. This is at another bog, not the one with the weird Terranovi orchid, but a similar type habitat nearby. And there was only one plant like this. This is the hood. These are the hooded lady's tresses. On the left, you have a nice close-up front view of the flower here, showing some good symmetry. And speaking of symmetry, on the right is very, very symmetrical of a plant. Sometimes I've seen these tend to spiral around with symmetry. As you see these, they're kind of like rotating, if that makes sense, whereas these are perfectly straight. I thought that was very, very unique. Next orchid we have is the club spur orchid, another very common orchid. In fact, I think this might be the most common orchid in my area. This feature right here, this is what you would call the club, I believe. This is from the flower above, from this stalk. They're whitish, yellowish, greenish, pretty inconspicuous. Nothing too exciting, but still an orchid all the same. This one's much prettier, as you can see right off the bat. This is the white fringed orchid, and like the other fringed orchids, I assume these can come in a lot of variety. Reading the paper that you sent me, John, actually, this plant is also mentioned. I believe they said they're not sure if it can hybridize, but still, there seems to be a lot of uncertainty about it, which is interesting. It leaves the room for a lot of adventuring. This, I believe, is the last slideshow, actually, in my presentation. This is the dragon's mouth orchid. These flowers, again, are also in the same bog by my house, which is the only place, actually, I've seen them, oddly enough. From my understanding, I don't know where I heard this, though, I think it was recent, that these tend to grow with the begonias as well, which they were nearby in that same bog, but these were pretty hidden to find. And here's another picture of them close up. This, I believe, is the last photo, actually. This is an older one. As you can see on the lips here, they're gotten a bit brown. This is one of the first pictures I've taken of this one. I thought it was all right. And these photos were only a tiny sampling of much of the beautiful flora that can be found on Newfoundland's Avalon Peninsula. These photos are the ones I've seen as my best and most show-worthy, but there are certainly more photos and many more to come in the future. I hope the beauty of the wildflowers found here will encourage you to try and get out and find them. That about concludes my slideshow. Thank you very much for viewing.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you very, very much.
Absolutely incredible.
Thank you. Thank you.
I can turn on my,
I
let's see.
suppose I could stop the sharing here
Down
now.
here.
I think I froze up. Oh yeah, I froze up a bit.
Let's see.
Yeah, I'm lagging out here.
Matt, if you would maybe turn your come out of your sharing.
Yeah, I pressed the stop share button and now the app froze entirely, actually.
Oh, well, that's
You think
okay.
I'd be able to just close it and reopen it, like the meeting on the link?
No, don't go away.
Yeah, no, because it's
Stay with us if you can. We can see
Yeah.
people if people put on side by side gallery.
I can't see anyone actually, no, because the screen's frozen entirely. But it's weird
Ah.
because they were still able to communicate.
We
Mhm.
can see other people and we can hear you. And I think anybody else, if they want to make a comment, can unmute themselves.
Yes, I'm gonna
That'll
try
be
unplugging
fine.
the camera
Yeah.
here. I don't know if this will.
Matt,
Um,
Matt, this is Carmel here. I have to say your
Hi.
images are spectacular. I
Thank
have
you
to say,
very, very
starting
much.
even with your pearly everlasting, I've never seen it taken up close. That was absolutely beautiful.
Thank you very much.
I
I'm
don't know
really
if-
fond of that plant.
Yeah, I don't know if amateur botanist describes you accurately. It's
Thank you
amazing.
very, very much.
It's amazing, your pictures. And I love the seed pods too, your close-ups, but also showing the plant in seed is so interesting. Thank you.
Yes, that's why I like to highlight.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Matt,
I was amazed. This is Todd. I was amazed that you found the Sagittaria, the arrowhead. That's extremely rare on the island, and I've only ever seen it on the West Coast. I didn't even knew it grew on the Avalon. I don't know, John, do you have any comments to make on that?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of spots you can look. I don't know if you've ever been with us when we've been going down to Collinet, but
No.
when you go to Collinet and then you turn west, west, and then just as you're coming to the 90-degree turn that goes down to Cape St. Mary's on the St. Mary's Bayside. Okay, so
Sorry
you
about
come
that,
down,
folks.
you come down to Collinet, you turn towards the west, and then there's an intersection after a few minutes that goes south again down towards Cape St. Mary's. There's a pond there, right at the junction, right by the road.
Okay.
You can throw your boots from your car into the pond, right by the road. It's Collins
Oh,
Pond.
wow.
It's called Collins Pond. Yeah, Collins Pond, Todd. It's on a
Okay.
map. And if the water level is not too high, if you walk along the edge of the pond and sort of along where there's a few trees start to come up near the pond, they're growing there along the edge, right on the sort of the water line. There's another place, if you're going out off the Avalon, you get out to Goobies. If you go down, if you turn down so that you get into the town of Goobies, you got to sort of go a few hundred yards on the road, on the Buren Peninsula Highway. And you go into the town of Goobies itself and go along a little ways. Not too far. Sorry for that. If you can't find it, ask somebody. There's an old hangar for like a float plane on the edge of the pond. Go down by the hangar. It's just no distance. Somebody will tell you. And it's grown along the edge of the water there too. There's a few other places. It's not common, but you'll find it.
Okay.
I should
One
look
of
there
those
too.
places.
That's not too far from me, actually.
Yeah, one of those places. Now you got to get it at exactly the right time of year when it's in flower, because if you don't, you won't see it.
Right.
Oh,
So,
Matt,
but I can give you some dates.
yes.
I have to say I'm absolutely fascinated by the fact, because I hike and just bring my camera, so I don't have a lot of gear. But you actually use a hand lens, and you
I do, a
take
little
picture
hand lens
through
and
your
my
hand
cell phone.
lens.
I do.
On your cell
And the
phone.
l-
And your cell
Yes.
phone.
My cell phone, that's the only thing I use. Well, a
Like-
couple pictures. Actually, that seed capsule with the picture plant, that one was with an actual camera. But mostly, for the most part, it's all my cell phone.
Wow.
And then
This
so
is
you
the
you hold
Google
up like
Pixel
and
7
it-
Pro, out of curiosity, if anyone's interested.
Okay, and then
looks like my
your
camera's getting
hand lens is just like a normal magnifying glass.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to try this.
Wow.
It
Yes.
works really well.
Yeah.
It takes a
Cool.
bit of practice to balance them out,
Yeah,
like so you don't have the loop like in the camera, or it's
Yeah.
blurry. But you really get some good results from it. Actually,
The images are sharp. Wow.
yeah.
they are. I'm surprised. Thank you very much.
You must have an iPhone, is it?
No, I have an Android. Google Pixel 7
Wow.
Pro is the one I have.
Which one again? Sorry.
Pixel 7 Pro.
Oh, Pixel. Oh, well, I have a Google Pixel, and mine's a 4, and so
Oh,
obviously
cool.
the 7 is a lot more intense.
Yeah, I had the 3 before this one actually, and I found it did just as good of a job. But this one has
Okay.
many more features. There's 3 different cameras, a macro lens and a telephoto lens, surprisingly.
Oh, okay.
It's quite a machine, I have to say.
Neat. That's fabulous. And the other part I loved about your show, I am gonna, when we put this on YouTube, I'm gonna come back. I like to wander around pond edges too, and I take pictures of these little tiny plants, and I don't know what they are, but you got them in flower. There's
Yes,
several I
I
recognize.
try my
and I'm like,
best.
"Oh, I've never seen the flower before." So that was fabulous too. Thank you.
Oh,
Really good
thank you.
pictures.
Yes, I'm always looking. If it's a flower, I will take a picture of it. Even if it takes me years to identify it, it's still nice to look at.
Mhm.
No, it was good. Thank you so much. I quite enjoyed
Thank
it.
you very much.
I found it amazing to see all of the flowers of so many things that we just look at and say, there's a, I don't know, there's a rose, but your picture, you see the parts. I mean, you know, you see
Yeah, I
all
know
the
what you mean
parts
though,
of
eh?
all the flowers and the
Yes.
male and female flowers and fantastic. So
Yeah, there's a lot of distinction between the two sometimes. Thank you.
yes, I guess there has to be, but to
Yeah, though.
see your photos, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The other thing is I mentioned the female and the male plants.
Oh yeah, the meadow root,
of the
the
cloudberry, you know.
phylloxera,
Yeah,
I
the
believe.
cloudberry. The
Oh,
cloudberry.
that one. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but there's quite a few, and like the crowberries, same thing.
Oh, really?
So if you're going around looking for crowberries, you'll either find them or you won't,
Hmm.
because there's either male or female depending where you happen to be standing.
Well, I guess there's more male and female than for the black, because I've seen a lot of the blacks like in fruit, but none of the pink ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense then.
Yeah, Matt, I really liked your presentation. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about like how you do all of this, I guess, like how you went from like having no background to, was it just a lot of like self-study or
Mostly self-study entirely, actually. Yeah, what I've learned either from my own Googling and research or things I've been taught on the Facebook group. Mostly from the Facebook group, actually, is where I've learned a lot of stuff.
Cool.
Mostly from there, though, is I'll see a plant, I'll Google it some more, get info, and see where the habitat is, what else exists there. And then from there, I'll just learn more and more and more exponentially, or choose to learn and try to, as best as I can. But it's a really fun journey.
Yeah, it looks fun. There's stuff I didn't notice before on the photos.
Oh
so
yeah,
I
there's
like
lots
that
to
a
be
lot.
seen.
Yeah.
Just about everywhere.
Matt, what is your favorite place out in that area? You were going to go for an afternoon, Bay Roberts, Upper Island Cove. What's your favorite spot?
Oh geez, that's a good question, actually. My
Mhm.
favorite spot, I'd say, is what I call the valley in quotes. It's here in Upper Island Cove. If you were to go down the road to go to Bryant's Cove, you'd
Mhm.
find a side road, and eventually you'd go on a quad path that would lead you down into the valley. There's a lot of native flora, and it's for the most part pretty untouched. A lot of the species, well, I shouldn't say most, but quite a lot actually were taken from there.
Mhm.
It's really unique.
Okay. Thank
Matt,
you.
something that you might think of a little while ago, and while it was still not winter, we had a field trip down on the downtown of St. John's.
Oh
Along the
yes, that's right. I
sidewalks.
remember that.
Along the sidewalks, and
Yeah, the weed walk.
yeah, and I've forgotten how many species we now have for there, but it's like 165 or 70 or something, just on
Oh
the
wow.
sidewalks. It's there. A lot of them are just little tiny little things in the cracks in the sidewalks. So I've also photographed around places like Harbor Grace, Carbonear and stuff in, just walking along the roads.
Oh
And
yes, and there's
there's
quite a lot of weird weeds.
hundreds of things. I mean, you go
Right?
about 2 feet off the sidewalk and it's just like you're in the wilderness in terms of number of
It
species.
is though, right?
Yeah,
love it.
So
Speaking of sidewalk cracks, I think it was Howard that pointed this out. There's a plant growing there. The shaggy soldier, is it called? It's only one spot in town, I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's,
Galen Songley, that's him.
that's,
I haven't seen that one yet, but now I know where it is. I will look.
Can you hear me? I don't know whether.
Yes, we
Yeah.
can,
Yes.
Howard.
Okay. That one is by the Alliance building.
Oh,
there used to
yes,
be-
that's right. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, there used to be Dominion. At the back of Dominion, there was a a loading bay, and it was a lot of broken up concrete, and it was there. And then they tore that down and built this enormous pile of apartments.
I think I know
And
what it
it's
is.
now on the other side of the Alliant building. There's a flight of steps up to the car park from the road, and there's just a little patch of it there. And in the middle of the car park in Churchill Square, there's a concrete block holding up a post, and it grows at the bottom of there.
Wow,
Just one place, and that's the only place where it occurs.
that's
So
so
I know.
cool. It's so strange.
There's a lot of things that are pretty much in that same category. I don't know how often you get to St. John's, Matt, but if
Every
you
now
get
and
into if you get into St. John's in I don't know, the late summer, early, late summer, you should go to the Water Street side of the old courthouse, the great big monstrous courthouse that's on Water
Oh
Street.
yeah.
And on the west side, we call it the west side. It's actually the south side, but the west side in the local parlance. There's a little parking lot right up against the buildings, just in off the road, right in front of the courthouse. And it's paved with cobblestones that used to be part of the pavement of Water Street years and years and years ago.
Oh wow.
And all the cobblestones are there. And it's all uneven and stuff. And they park cars on it. But if you get down your hands and knees and look between the cobblestones, you will see the Japanese pearlwort, which is
Really?
like a minuscule little plant. I mean, the whole plant sometimes is not even 2 centimeters across.
Really?
And it's the only place in Newfoundland that it's known.
No way.
That's it. If they ever pave that, it's gone.
Oh wow.
But they're really cool, and you can tell it's them and not the regular pearlwort because they're really, really hairy.
Oh wow. Yeah, I've seen the pearl wort a lot. I haven't seen a single hair, so it'll
Yeah,
be
but they're
very
really
telling
hairy,
trait.
and that's the only place we know of.
Wow, I'll have to keep an eye out for that one too.
Except-
and the other ones.
Except they used to be in the lane between the Court of Appeals and the old museum building on Ducker Street.
Hmm.
And then they tried to pave that or fix that up, but I think there may be still a few. But basically they're only at in that little bit of cobblestone down by the water.
And
Wow,
it was,
eh?
it was
Crazy.
really funny this summer when, oh, sorry, it was really funny this summer when we were on the field trip and John was pointing this out to us. So there was like about 10 of us all bent down,
Yeah.
looking in the cobblestones.
That
and all
would be
these
me.
people kept walking over going, what are you looking at? What are you
Yeah.
looking at? And
Oh,
the
I have
group
no idea
kinda
how many
grew.
times I think people look at me and think, what is that guy doing?
But we showed him,
Oh, yeah.
Right.
and he got right into it.
Yeah.
Oh, it
thought it
is
was
interesting
great.
though.
When me and Howard were down there this summer, the police came over, or was it the police, Howard, or the people
No,
from the courthouse? And they were like, "Hey guys, what are you doing?" Because I guess we were cooping down,
Jeez.
looking a bit strange
Yeah.
on our
You
pearl
get
wart
some
adventure.
weird positions and situations looking for plants, I find.
Yeah.
But that's how you find the best ones.
Yeah.
That's right.
Don't stop looking. That's what I say.
You mentioned the cloudberry, the bake apple, and
Yes.
you said you don't see many of them. Head down to Wesleyville and you'll see lots.
Mm.
And
Oh, I'll have to keep a note of that then. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
and I lived in the Yukon for quite a long time, and they grow up there in the very north near a town called Old Crow. I was
Oh,
more
cool.
central, and I never saw any there. But the cloudberry is known by the First Nations in BC and in the Yukon as salmon berries.
Oh, I
Yeah.
can see
Yeah.
why they call them that actually.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And our main berry, the one that I picked the most when I was up there, was low bush cranberries, which were
yes.
known as lingonberries. So that would be our partridge berry. But
Yes,
now,
they're very common here too.
yes, but I've heard of cranberries, wild cranberries here in Newfoundland. Can anyone fill me in on that, please?
Oh, we pick cranberries. I don't want to tell you where.
No,
From
but
my
our,
understanding, there are two different species. There could
Yes.
be more, and I don't know if there. I'll look real quick. Actually, I have access to the Vascan database where you can search
There's
for
the
names.
lesser cranberry and the greater cranberry. So
Yes, I believe that's what it was.
macrocarpon is the standard cranberry. Like if you go to supermarkets and you want to get a cranberry jams or whatever. And then what we have in Newfoundland is the lesser cranberry, is what we call a marshberry, and which is
Oxycoccus.
Oxycoccus, yes. And I find that the marshberry is a far more common one than the real cranberry. Real cranberries usually grow by the ocean, whereas the marshberries are just sort of growing everywhere, anywhere that's sort of wet.
But
Yeah, that's true.
you don't want to pick them or eat them until after the frost because they got
I've heard that.
little wormy things in them.
Oh yeah, well,
Yes.
parchberries have that too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I
Now, you-
wouldn't want to find out the hard way.
years ago, I remember seeing in someone's house, they had picked the partridge berries before they were ripe, and they had them put in a big wooden barrel with water. And
Oh.
apparently that got rid from what I understood, that got rid of the worms.
Yeah.
I've heard of that technique before
Yeah.
too, actually.
Yeah.
No,
But
not
Marilyn-
familiar.
So Marilyn, just getting back to your comment about the cranberry, I suspect up in your area it's mostly marshberries that you're seeing up there as opposed to the real cranberry. I find most of the real cranberries are more on the southern part of the island.
Oh, you're talking about in Glovertown area?
Yeah, Glovertown, then going right on up then into Wesleyville and points further north. It's primarily marshberries up there as opposed to the real cranberry.
Okay, so I haven't lived here long enough in recent years to even see that. Mom always referred to marshberries, how much she loved marshberries. Now she grew up in Carbonear.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, like I said,
Yeah.
marshberries are, they're very, very common right across the entire island, whereas the real cranberries are much more localized.
Yes, actually, I got to interject for a second. Carbonear is where I found one of those specimens of the cranberry, the macrocarpon, and that was in a boggy area, oddly enough, where I found the tuberous grass pink orchid. So maybe she found some from there. But marshberries overall, yeah, they're by far the most common one. And what do I have here? Oxycoccus, that's native to all of Canada, and the macrocarpon. Oh, I just lost that here. Is native to Ontario, Quebec, and the Atlantic provinces, and introduced in BC.
Well, this has been really quite the evening.
It has, hasn't it?
Yes.
So many pictures. I think everybody is, personally, I am like Anne. I would like to just look at everything again and go slowly.
Well,
Take it all in and be grateful that you've labeled where you saw them, because maybe in the summer, we might get up there too.
yes, I'd like to see you guys out
Very
this way.
helpful. Thank you for doing that. Yeah.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm actually working on a gallery website too of all these photos. So maybe in the future, well, it will be in the future, of course, I'll have all these pictures uploaded too to look at, and the previous ones, and other plants not included in the slideshow, because I could have went on all night. I really could.
Matt, do you want to do a little plug for your seeds? You do sell plant seeds.
Well, I would love to. I sell Newfoundland seeds, some introduced species, but I am moving more towards the native species. You could follow my website, pfseeds.ca. Currently, I have a small catalog, mostly wildflowers, like wildflower mixes. I have some herbs too, Canada mint, Scots lovage, and a couple other things. You think I know my own inventory, but I'm a little bit brain farting right now over the winter. I'll load up the website real quick, actually.
I just thought something just popped in my head. When you
Yes.
sell these seeds, do you recommend how to grow them, like the seed, the soil?
I do, yes. Like
Yeah,
for
because
example,
that
here
might-
I'll have, say, the Canada mint. And I'll recommend that it's usually growing in wetter areas, and that it could grow in a garden, because I have grown it like in my herb garden, but it does much better in the wild, like near wetter areas. And I will make note of that in the seed envelopes.
'Cause some of the plants have very mysterious requirements that
They are.
you wouldn't necessarily guess.
I know, right? There's a lot of species I want to sell, but they all need a cold stratifying period, and that really knocks out a large customer base, because it's not really something the average gardener can do with ease.
Matt, you're still selling from Gay Seed though, too.
I am, yes. They usually buy in packs of 50, like once or twice, sometimes 3 every year, and around the spring and summer.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm
Thank
very honored actually for them to be carrying my seeds.
thank you.
Thank you.
It's great.
It's a fun little hobby, actually. I got to be honest.
I guess we should probably say good evening to everybody, and thank you
Yes, that
so
sounds
much,
great.
Matt, for
Thank you
coming
very
and
much.
showing all of your sharing all of these beautiful pictures with us.
Oh,
It was
that's my
great.
utmost pleasure.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very
Thank
much.
you,
Thank
everybody,
you,
for
Matt.
coming, and we'll see you in about a month.
Thank you,
Awesome,
Karen.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Good night,
Karen.
folks.
Thank you, Matt.
Bye,
Okay.
Good
good
night,
night.
everybody.
Take
Bye,
care.
Matt.
Bye. I think I'm still connected.